I, as a painting student, really focused on abandoned houses. I grew up in Virginia, got very used to driving through these rural towns that are just all abandoned buildings. Loved the way nature reclaimed them. Loved seeing the trees that would just grow through a house and it would just kind of become part of the landscape. So I was creating that imagery a lot, over and over, just these decrepit, stated buildings. And so when I was starting to write the book, it was my senior year of college and reflecting a lot on my friendships and the landscape that I love so much. I was living in New York City at the time, still live here now. But feeling really homesick and also torn by the idea of not living in a house surrounded by my best friends anymore. So I wrote this story following a group of friends who find, the body of one of their friends in a decrepit house with a tree growing through the center of it, and their friend has been placed inside the tree, very ritualistic, occult. Yeah, I just love the way that nature becomes one with abandoned buildings too. Frankie was the first one I started with. She's very much a spitfire. She can be frustrating, annoying. She can be very fiercely loyal, very loving. And she really clashes with her twin sister. She feels like her sister is moving on to bigger and better things, and she's kind of the type of person who is satisfied with her hometown and doesn't feel the need to leave it. And she's a little bit resentful for the rest of her friends who do want to leave and create new lives, and she would rather have everything stay exactly the way it is. And I feel like she is kind of a love letter to my younger self of being so afraid to leave my hometown and really feeling like I have these wonderful things. Why should I go anywhere else? And of course, later on, being so grateful that I did push myself out of my comfort zone and move on. So she's a little bit of that simmering energy of not wanting to let go of things that you've earned. Um, yeah, and Sophia's her much more imaginative, flighty counterpart. Someone that is very easy to love, has a lot of good friends, but they can't really pin her down. They don't know if she's ever really being honest with them about who she is or what she feels. Um, Poppy is their friend from growing up. Um, you learn throughout the book that she has a connection with Sophia as well. And she is much more resentful of her hometown, wants to go see bigger, better things, wants to be the best person she can possibly be. And she feels kind of trapped by those ideals of staying exactly where you are. It definitely, this novel, I wrote it over a course of about 4 years. And it went through many iterations. Like the first iteration didn't even have this flip side of the universe dimension that is brought into the story later on. So I definitely fought with how to end it, fought with if I should leave it open-ended, if it should be very wrapped up succinctly. I ideally would love to write another novel in the universe of this, so kinda wanted to leave it in a place where I could do that, and so maybe one day that might happen. But yeah, I think for me, characters are always the core part of my novels, and their relationships felt so important that it's almost like we are just entrenched in their dynamics and their relationships, and these things are happening around them. And so we're being tossed through these insane situations, but we're also experiencing it through this taut sister bond that's the kind of sisterhood where you love each other so desperately that you also hate each other a little bit because you're so furious that you can't reciprocate the love in the same way. In We Ate the Dark, we have 5 protagonists that we hear from each of their perspectives. In Voice Like a Hyacinth, it follows a group of 5 painting students at a prestigious isolated art school, and they're best friends, but we're reading the story from the perspective of one student, Joe. So this was a different experience in writing it where, I could only share the first person perspective of Joe and had, these other characters still a big group of friends, but you couldn't get into the heads of the other friends this time. So it was definitely a little bit more challenging for me to make them each feel like solid individuals who were nuanced people, um, without being able to get into their head and put exactly what they were feeling on the page too, but a fun challenge, um, and a much faster process for how this one was written, so I think I had less time to kind of pick it apart and had to just push forward and dive into the story. A Voice Like a Hyacinth follows these painting students. They're competing for a solo show, a solo exhibition at the end of their senior year of college. So each of them is creating a body of work in the hopes that they'll be selected as the soloist. But because they are best friends, know everything about each other, live with each other, love each other more than anything, it makes the competition pretty horrific because all of them will lose except for one. And at the same time, they decide to take part in a ritual to unlock their deepest creativity. And to do so, they have to sacrifice someone else. So they're performing this chaotic, nasty ritual in the hopes of maybe all of them will have a better shot at being a soloist. So it really devolves into absolute chaos, fun paranormal horror, psychological horror. You never really know what's true and what's not, so it's a good time. I have a hard time writing without bringing a ghost into the room. I think I love writing about that, like, energy, how energy manifests in a room, how it can take on physical appearance, like that sort of dread and anxiety that comes along with having to fight with your friends can manifest into this horrible thing that looms behind you all the time and that you carry with you always. So for me, when I'm writing this story, I'm just making that a little bit more physical and giving it an actual form in the room. Um, and while writing horror, I feel like I've tried to kind of adhere to this idea that I saw Phoebe Waller-Bridge mention once, where she said that a scene should always have like three things happening at once. So if I have like two characters fighting and there's like a fire alarm going off in the background or something, maybe I also have a fly hitting a window over and over, and it's this like unsettling sound, like overwhelming feeling of there's so many pieces happening and it's like, is that fly real? Am I hearing something else? What is that buzzing in the background? Like that unsettling feeling that makes you think something is not entirely right in this moment.